Good morning, everyone. I'm really excited to be here in Poland and to speak with you this morning about lean product management. A little bit background on myself. I am a consultant now that beeps, that works with companies to help implement new product management processes. I'm also a UX designer, and as Paul says, I have worked at a variety of places. I have also had my own startup. I worked at large corporations. The thing that I'm passionate about is really trying to figure out what is the best way to build products. And I think that's why we're all here. But I think sometimes people come into Agile conferences and they see talks about lean or product management and they think, why is this in an Agile conference? So you might be sitting there going, you're talking about lean product management, but I do Agile. So why are we talking about product management anyway? Why aren't we talking about software development? Most of us are software developers here, right? So I want to explain to you first and foremost why I think we should start talking more about product management and more about this front-end part before it goes into development. When we think about Agile, I think Agile is great, by the way. I teach Agile. I'm a coach. I love Agile. But the thing is, Agile only optimizes part of the process. And we have to figure out how to optimize the other part of the process. You can kind of think of software development and building products like a fine wine, right? If you use terrible grapes, it doesn't matter how good of a winemaker you are, you're going to get bad wine. And it's going to taste bitter, and it's going to taste sour, and I'm not going to be happy, and you're going to look like this dog, and you're going to spit it out. It's not going to be good. Software development is very, very similar. When we talk about Agile, we're only talking about optimizing how we build the products. But we're not talking about what we actually build at the beginning. And no matter what you implement, if it's XP, if it's Scrum, if you're just implementing bad ideas, you're going to have bad ideas in the outside. You're just building crappy products faster. So we need to talk about the beginning as well of what we put into that. What are we feeding through our Scrum sprints? What are we feeding into XP if we're doing it that way? What are those ideas? And that's really what we're going to talk about today. Because in the end, building is the easy part, and I'm not saying that coding is easy. Don't get me wrong here. I don't want to riot on my hands. Everybody's like, no, I'm a developer. Coding is hard. It's very, very hard. It is. But the thing is that when you get to the building part, you already know what you're going to build. And actually writing that code is a lot easier than figuring out how to do it and what to build. And today we're going to be talking about the what to build. So that comes down to product management, and that comes down to product development and figuring out the end part before we put it into our sprints. So I teach product management in New York City to a bunch of people, and I teach it at a school called General Assembly, where we get a bunch of people who want to know about product management. And they usually come in and they don't have any idea. So how many of you are actually product managers here? Ooh, not many. Okay, so when I go out and I ask people, what is a product manager, or how do you sum them up in a few words, they say, well, the product manager is the voice of the customer. And I said, oh, that makes sense, and I started putting it into my slides for my class at General Assembly. And then I stopped and thought about it for a minute, and I said, you know what, looking at all the functions that we do as a product manager, are we really the voice of the customer? Is that what we really do? And at the end of the day, I think we've lost touch with that. I think product managers were supposed to be the voice of the customer. We're supposed to be the person who goes out and champions them and builds stuff for them and says, yeah, we're going to give you everything that you need to solve your problems. We're going to give you a great product. But we've lost that along the way. And it's because our companies get into this build all the things mode, right? We as companies are stuck in this build trap where we just build feature after feature after feature, and we don't stop to think, is this really what our customers want? And you can kind of see that in our reward systems. We reward developers for just writing tons of code. We reward designers for making beautiful designs. And we reward product managers for coming up with a lot of ideas. And at the end of the day, we're really focused on outputs instead of outcomes. And that outcome is whether or not the customer likes the product. So this kind of culture, though, creates something that I've seen a lot with product managers, where they get this kind of hero complex. They come in and they say, I got all the ideas and I'm going to save the day. I'm going to be the one who comes up with the next iPad, and I'm going to be the one who comes up with the next Facebook. And a lot of junior product managers that I get in my class, or people who want to be product managers, they come in with that expectation. They come in saying, I want to be the next Steve Jobs. so I'm going to take a product management class. But this isn't really healthy. This is not healthy for building really great products. And we need to stop that hero complex and take our focus away from that and get product management back to a place where we focus on learning and we focus on solving problems for our customers. If we change our way of looking at product management into solving problems instead of creating really cool products that boost our egos, we're going to see a lot better products out there. But there's a problem, because when we go out and communicate what we want from a product manager, that's not the case. So this is a typical product management request, and it's by Google. So this is a job posting by Google. And if you read it, don't read it, it's very long. If you read the highlights, it says, the product management team works closely with our engineers to guide products from conception to launch. And you'll work with Googlers from engineering, sales, marketing, and finance, to name just a few. You'll gather requirements, you'll work with teams, and you'll help define a product vision and strategy. Cool, that sounds great, Google. So I'm supposed to be building products for our customers, but nowhere in my job description does it say I actually have to talk to customers, anywhere. So a lot of times, this is a very typical job posting too. A lot of times when we say what we want from product managers, it never includes anything about talking to customers, about going out there and solving their problems. We just communicate the basic traditional product management roles and responsibilities, which are determining new features and product vision, gathering business requirements, getting stakeholder buy-in, yada, 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 manage product roadmaps. All these things are not focused on the customer. So this is what we have to get back into. We have to focus on the problem. We need to figure out what the problem is as a product manager so that we can start solving them and deliver value for the customer. This is the biggest difference between a traditional product manager and a lean product manager, right? As a lean product manager, we really want to focus on the outcome. We don't care how many features we build. We don't care how many lines of code the developers write. And we don't care if things are really, really cool and trendy and maybe they get a splashy thing in a UX magazine. No, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters to a lean product manager is really solving problems for a customer that delivers them value. And at the end of the day, the customer says, wow, this is great. This actually solves my problem. Not, this is a great design, or this is a really cool product. This is great, I use it every single day. So, how do we shift from traditional product management into lean product management? To do that, we have to look at some of the goals and some of the roles and responsibilities that we have for traditional product managers and think of how can we change those into a lean product management mode. So we start off here. Lean product managers solve customer problems and needs over gathering internal requirements from the company. So one of the things that a lot of people put, especially in that job posting, is a product manager is responsible for going and getting internal requirements or gathered from stakeholders in the company. So usually something like this happens when you manage stakeholders. This is Dilbert. I added all the product features that each of you demanded. Now our product is a worthless hodgepodge of complexity. I appreciate your input. I couldn't have failed without you. Teamwork. Right. This happens all the time when we just gather internal requirements from our stakeholders. Most of the time, marketing will come over to product or to the development team, or sales will come over, and they'll say, I need you to build this feature. And then the product manager goes, okay, give me your requirements. Okay, check A, B, C, great. Ship it off to development. Let's go build this. But we don't stop and think, are those requirements really what the customer needs? We're taking requirements from somebody in sales, from somebody in marketing, or the CEO of a company, or sometimes the product manager themselves. But are we actually getting out there and talking to customers? No. So a lot of the problem I see with this is that we take those internal requirements and then we turn them into user stories. Now, I like user stories, and user stories were meant to be a great thing, but I think we're butchering them as a team. So a lot of teams I see now take an internal requirement and they write it down as a user story, and they say, as a user, I want a button so that I can cancel something. That's a terrible user story. right? User stories were meant to focus on customer problems, customer needs. And instead, we've been treating them as a feature list, put them in a backlog, pull them out for development. So instead of using user stories in this way, I've been focusing more on jobs to be done stories. And these are something that I've been implementing in all my teams. And what a job story does is it focuses more on the problem and the situation that a company, or that a user has at that moment. And then it figures out a solution later to solve it. This focuses you back on the problem. So a job story, instead of saying, as a user, I want X, it really focuses you on when I have this situation as a user, I want to achieve some kind of motivation so that I can get an expected outcome. Now this gets away from a feature and puts it more on the problem itself. Should we switch? No? Okay, I'll keep going. So to give you an example, this is a user story versus a job story. As a user, I want to save items to a wish list so I can buy them later. This could be a typical story you see at an e-commerce site. But a job story would be, when I find a product I like, but I'm not ready to buy yet, I want to save the product for later so I can quickly come back and purchase it without searching again. Now, the problem with the first one up here is that we pigeonhole ourselves into one solution. When we write that user story, which is usually the first thing we do right after we hear a requirement, we're committing ourselves to building a wish list on an e-commerce site. But what if that user doesn't come to that e-commerce site often? Maybe they're browsing around, looking at different stores, trying to find a present for Christmas, for example. And they say, hey, I found something on this store that I never go to. I want to send it to myself so I remember to come back and buy it. That could be another solution. Another solution is that you just put something on there that lets you email the product to yourself. Why do you need a wish list? So when we focus on job stories, we don't commit ourselves to one solution at the beginning. We focus on the situation so that we can actually go and brainstorm what we're going to do next. So after we have our job stories, we need to start looking at a different thing. Usually when we have these user stories, we do preconceived solutions. We start off with a solution that we came up with first. But as lean product managers, what we really want to do is focus on data-driven experiments over preconceived solutions. We rarely stop as product managers to think, is our first solution actually the best solution? So, to do this, we have to know a little bit about how our brains work. How many of you have read Thinking Fast and Slow? Okay, a few. Excellent book. I really recommend you go read it. Thinking Fast and Slow explains a lot about how our brains work. And there's two systems of thought here. The first one is System 1. Now, System 1 tests our reactions. System 1 is something that we do automatically when we're in this mode. System 1 means I'm walking. Nobody stops to think, how do I walk, right? You just walk, you just do, you just act. If a ball was flying at your face, you just go like this and get rid of it. This is System 1. It's fast, it's automatic. We don't have to spend a lot of time going into it. But there's System 2. System 2, with our brain, is slow. It's analytical, it's logical. You get into System 2 when you start solving math problems. But the thing is, you start off in System 2 when you don't really know how to do something, and you switch over to System 1 when you get used to it. When you were younger and you were learning multiplication, for example, 2 times 3 equals 6, you had to sit there and logically go through it and that you were really focusing on getting the right outcome. But now that you're older and you've done these things a lot, it's System 1. System 1 takes over, and when you see 2 times 3, you automatically go 6. You don't have to think through it. Well, the same thing happens when we do with products. When you start off as a product manager, we start in System 2. When you're learning how to do these things, you're slow, you're analytical, you're deliberate, you're trying to figure out, how do I make this work? But when you've been building features after features for a long time, and as your company gets older, System 1 starts to take over, and you automatically react when you see something to build. So the problem is that System 1 leads to bad product decisions. When we have System 1 take over, we automatically react and start building the first thing that we can think of. So we need to recognize this as product managers and stop and figure out, how do we trick our brains into going back into System 2 so that we stop and we think and we deliberately analyze every product that we put out there. So System 2, to do this, we have to recognize 3 types of bias. We are biased when we create products. We're human beings. We have a lot of bias out there. And there's three main types of bias. There's a lot of bias in this, but there's three main types of bias that I see when we create products. And the first one is causality. Causality means that when we attribute the reason that things happen to a specific cause. So we don't really look at why things are happening. We just automatically assume it happens for a reason. The next one is the curse of knowledge. We assume everybody thinks like us. We know ourselves very well, and we project that onto other people's. If we have a higher level of knowledge, we assume everybody has our higher level of knowledge. And we don't stop to think that maybe people don't have as much information as us. And then the last bias is anchoring. And anchoring is where we latch onto specific pieces of information that might be insignificant. So we latch onto data. If we see 20%, we think, oh, 20% is it. And we don't go in and try to focus on the big picture. So you can see these three types of biases come up quite a bit in product decisions. The first one, causality, I like to call the copycat experience. So you might hear somebody come up and say, well, we built a mobile app once. It was really, really, really successful. So let's build a mobile app again. I had one company come to me, and that's exactly their reason for building a mobile app. They said, well, last December we launched a mobile app, and we got 200,000 people to sign up and download it. It was great. We got so many people. So it's June, and we're going to build another mobile app. I said, okay, what kind of mobile app you want to build? Oh, we don't know. We just got to build a mobile app. Okay. So a lot of times we think just because we were successful for one thing, we attribute it to the wrong cause. A lot of people will attribute being successful at a mobile app just to the fact that it was a mobile app, not that it actually solved somebody's problem. Another one, too, is that we copy our competitors or copy other people. Everyone else has a mobile app, so we need a mobile app, too, because they're successful. This is another thing that companies say. But the problem is, a mobile app should solve a specific problem. If you just build mobile apps for the sake of building mobile, then you're not going to win. It doesn't solve anybody's problem. So every app that you build and every product you build has to be deliberate. But a lot of times, we just attribute this to the fact that it's mobile, or the fact that it worked before, so it's got to work again, or it worked for someone else, so it's going to work for me. And we don't look at the surrounding that. The next one is the curse of knowledge. And I like to call this you're the expert type thing. A lot of times in B2B companies, we'll say things like, the customers want all the data possible. So I worked for a B2B company, and we were giving people SEO data. So we gave marketers a bunch of SEO data, and we said, oh, well, we'll go let them figure out, what to do with their keyword ranking. And one of the biggest debates I got into with the sales team and with the product team and the CEO was that we should make this simple for people so that we can go in and they could just find what they need really fast. And they said, oh, no. No, all these people here, they're experts. They really want all the data. They want large tables. They want tons of data. They want to go crunch numbers. This is what really drives them. But that's what we wanted. That's what we were excited about. We were like, ooh, let's go into the data and check out all our SQL tables. That's what drove us. And if you went and talked to the users, they said, no, I'm far too busy for that. I don't want all the data, right? I just want to go in there, do my job, move on to the next thing. I've got 40,000 things to do today. Why do I want to sift through data? So we have to recognize that our customers are not just like us. They're not the same people as us. Sometimes they don't have as much information. We stare at our products all day long, every day. We're in it using it. They're not. So we have to make things a little bit easier, and we have to really understand them to get a better feel of what they need. The last one is anchoring. This is when we latch on to a specific point of data. And this is what I like to say is what was said versus reality. So in one company that I worked with, another B2B company, they said, oh, all my clients are asking for this. One of the sales guy comes up and he's like, I really want to build this feature. All my clients are asking for it. We really need to build this feature. It should be high priority. It should be the first thing that we build in this quarter. But when you asked them which clients are asking for it, it was one. One of the clients with the loudest mouth, the one that was in his ear all the time, was the one asking for it. But since he wasn't really looking at the big situation and just his own, he was really latching onto the number of times that one client was asking for it. So this is when we really attribute When we look at the small picture, when we say, oh, well, one person is asking for a lot of times, that means everybody must want it. So we really have to take a step back and look at the whole picture. We have to look at all the data and see, does all our clients want it or does just one? So this is where data becomes important, and every product manager should stop the person who's coming in and requesting these features there and say, show me what percentage of your customers or what percentage of all of our customers want that. Give me a list of your customers. I want to go talk to them. I want to see what they need in their things. And if you do that, that stops preventing it. Because if you get stuck with these biases, you commit too early to one solution. Your first idea starts off as like a cute little idea that seems kind of cool and, oh, we should do that. And then the more you think about it and the more you subject yourself to this bias, it becomes part of you, just like this cat beard. It becomes part of your identity. And then you commit very early to one solution. You invest a lot of time, a lot of energy into it. So I think one of the most important things a product manager should do, which we never teach them to do, is just say no. Say no, we're not going to build that. Or wait. Wait, let's go back, let's analyze this, let's make sure we're not biased about it, and then we'll think if we should build it. So as a product manager, whenever I'm teaching junior product managers, the thing I teach them to do is stand up to the business and say, no, great idea, we're not going to build it right now. What we're going to do, though, is test it, because that's the best way to combat this. If we use the build, measure, learn cycle here, we can prove if these ideas are right, if these are the ideas that we really should build. So we take it through this cycle, and we can see if our bias is in the way of our judgment when we're building these products. And the way that we do that is by using an MVP, a minimum viable product. When we test things with an MVP, we put very small effort into getting the most learning. But a lot of companies think that an MVP is just a half-assed piece of shit, right? I don't want an MVP. It breaks everything. One of the companies that I try to implement it into, I said, hey, this is a great idea. We should try to build an MVP. And they all went, what? No. And I was like, geez, what happened? What did I say? Did I say something bad? They were like, oh, no. We can't do MVPs. And I was like, why? I said, well, one guy came in here, he read the Lean Startup, he thought he knew everything, and then he put a bunch of broken code on our site. And then it broke everything, our customers were very unhappy. That is not an MVP at all. So when you think of an MVP, I don't want you to think of it as a kind of half-finished product that we just throw up there and see what's going on. This is not it. And this is not lean. Lean is not cheap. Lean does not mean broken. Lean does not mean cutting corners. Lean means focusing on learning and not investing too many of our resources or our effort, time, into building things that people don't want. That is the purpose of lean. It's not about building broken things. So when we think of an MVP, what MVP really is the smallest amount of effort you can do to learn about your users. You want to minimize your effort, and you want to maximize your learning about everybody. You want to learn about what people want. You want to learn about what makes them tick and what they want and their needs and their problems. That's why you build an MVP. So to give you an example of that, working at an e-commerce site, we really wanted to test this idea. Okay, our e-commerce site had a bunch of products on it that people had to buy month over month. So for example, this Viviscal Extra Strength Health thing, hair thing, it made your hair grow shiny and big and smooth. So a lot of guys were building it in place of Rogaine, building it, buying it. So Viviscal, you had to buy every month to keep it up, to keep your hair going really nicely. So we had this great idea. What if we implement subscription onto our site so that when you buy it once, it just automatically keeps renewing every month? This is something you can do on Amazon, for example. But when we looked at our code base and how to implement this, it was going to take us about 4 to 6 months and 5 engineers to build it. It was over $250,000 just to implement this. Now, it's worth it if we can get returns on that, but it's not if people don't want subscriptions, right? So how do we actually go and test this? As an MVP, people want it. Well, we did this. We changed the name of the product to subscription. And then we put a little checkbox on there and said, you realize you're subscribing to something when you buy this, and you'll get something every month. And then in the database, we just had one new checkbox, one new field that was marked off as subscription. And each month, customer service would pull down that list and manually place the order. And what we were able to do is measure if people canceled their subscriptions after 1 month. And it turns out they all did. Nobody wanted subscriptions. They bought it once, and then they didn't feel comfortable signing up to receive it again and again and again. So they wanted to manually place their orders. So they canceled all their subscriptions after the first month or the second month, and it wasn't worth us building it. But the thing is, this took us 1 week to build. It took us 1 week, one person to build it. And then it took customer service maybe 2 hours, 3 hours every month to do it. So we saved $250,000 by doing an MVP like this. And the thing about MVPs is it's not just about saving money, it's about opportunity cost. So while the 5 developers that we would have had building this were not building it, they were building things that people loved, right? We weren't wasting our time and our energy and our resources on building things that people didn't want. We were building things that they actually did want, and we were measuring. So MVPs really, really let us do this. They let us focus a little bit of effort to see if we get big returns without committing all of our time into building a lot of things people don't. But the thing about an MVP is that you have to work towards a goal. Whenever we're planning these experiments, I see people just build experiments and then they just shove them off into the world. But they don't say what they're going to do at the end of the day. So you have to have a vision and a strategy aligning yourselves to that goal. Because otherwise, you're just steering yourself into the sea, and you're just going to be pivoting around, trying to figure out where to go. So there always has to be a goal at the end of the day, or a KPI you're working to increase. Now, this sounds all great, but you might be sitting there and going, fantastic, that's great, but we have this huge product roadmap, and it's got a line of products on it already. So where am I actually at? I have to deliver things. Well, that's one of the problems with traditional product management. We focus a lot on feature roadmaps, but not customer roadmaps. So the way a typical product roadmap is built is that we look at feature buckets. They're usually not this pretty or colorful. Sad about that. Usually we'll look at a feature bucket for Q4, right, or Q3 or Q2. And we say, okay, we're going to do a Google Maps integration. And we might be planning this in January for December. I see a lot of companies, they'll do 3 years in advance for a product roadmap. And they'll say, okay, it's going to take us about 2 months to do this feature. We're going to need like maybe 5 developers, I guess. Yeah, 5 developers, CTO? Yeah, 5 developers sound good. Okay, cool. What's the ROI? Well, I think it's going to be high if we do this. Okay, high sounds good. Let's put it on there. Done. Now we have a feature roadmap. And now we're committed to delivering all these things in that time bucket of the 3 months or the 2 months or the 5 months that we committed to in January when we don't start coding until February. So the problem with product roadmaps is there's a lot of magic that happens that goes into doing these roadmaps. We get estimations from developers, and sometimes those are a year in advance, and you have no idea what you're estimating, right? Here, estimate this feature. What is it? I don't know. Okay, I guess it'll take 2 months. Yeah, cool, 2 months. You're going to commit to that? Oh, yeah, not really. Okay, 2 months. Write it down. Go on. So we commit to estimations without really knowing what we're going to build. It's really hard to guess how much time it's going to take for something that you don't know. Also, we commit people to it as well. And it's crazy because when we make these product roadmaps so far in advance, how do we know what our customers will want in 1 year? How will we know what they'll want in 6 months? The market changes so fast with software development that the needs of our customers change with it. And we never recognize that in product roadmaps. Many teams don't leave the time to go back and refine it. They commit to it. They'll show it to their customers. They say, we're building you this in this quarter, and we're building you that in that quarter. Instead of doing that, we should really be focusing on their problems. So for every new product development, I try to suggest this problem roadmap that I've come up with. And this lets us really focus on experimenting and iterating to find what customers want before we commit to buying. And the way that this works is you can break it up into time blocks. I do quarters. So in quarter 1, we look at all the problems that our customers have, and we prioritize that by the highest problem. And we do that by getting out of the building, talking to our customers and figuring out what's the biggest need right now. And we also align that with a goal. So every quarter, it's a KPI as a product team that we need to hit. So that KPI might be we need to increase customer engagement by 25%. We need to increase subscription signups by 10%. There's some kind of goal steering us along, and all those problems, if we solve them, relate to that goal. That's how we start off. Now, at the beginning of this time frame, we'll experiments. We'll take the biggest problem, we'll start experimenting on it, we'll learn more about our customers, we'll build some MVPs, and we get some success from those tests. And then after that, we start building and validating with our customers. We run our sprints, we figure out if they like it, we get validation, we tweak it until we get to the end, and we know people will like it. And at that point, you plan it and you build everything, right? You go back, you build your features, you get customer input, you do your usability tests, and you do it like normal. So to give you an example of how I took one company's product roadmap and transformed it into this, let's look at this one. Don't read all that. This is what they gave me. So it was a big Excel sheet, and they said, we're planning our next year. And if you, on the top, they've got feature buckets. And it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 7 feature buckets for 2 developers. So that was a big problem. We didn't even get there yet. But under these feature buckets, and this is, I'm pretty sure, yeah, this was Q2 only. 2 developers in Q2. They have a list of things that got to go into it. So if you look up here, we got the feature buckets, and then down here, they're just estimating the return on investment. Now, the ROI down here was completely arbitrary and made up. They said, I think this is going to give us 100% here, and 10% there, and 20% there. But this is what I see from a lot of product roadmaps. But the thing is, we didn't do any validation or any research on these feature buckets at all. None of this was validated. So how do we know that people actually want this? We were just assuming that people wanted it. So instead, we started popping some things into a problem roadmap. So one of these features is called guides, and we weren't sure if people liked it. So we said, you know what, for June, we're going to go out there and run a couple tests. We're going to figure out, do people like it? And we started building MVPs. We launched a landing page to see if people liked the idea. And we got about 5,000 signups in a week. That was huge. So we said, okay, that's cool. That's great. People like this idea. Then we went into another test, and we tried to see if people liked the content. So we built some emails and sent it out with what we could include in this. And eventually it'd be a web version, but we done who was signing up, who was unsubscribing, and what they thought. We followed up with them. We figured out, yes, things, we don't like the other things. And then we ran another test. And at of July, we were able to plan and build. We said, okay, we know enough to build the version 1. We know enough to get it out there. And by doing this, we were able to figure out what people wanted in just 1 month, 2 months, and then build it, instead of building it over 3 months, launching it, and then finding out in August that they hated it. So that's the power of doing the problem roadmap. And it increased the KPI that we were going for. But there's always things that you do know you need to. There are things that are validated, or there are technical pieces that you have to do. And for that, you just have to add them in. This problem roadmap only works for the unknown things, for the things you're not sure if your customers want at the beginning of product development. Once you know, you're going to have to go and build it, but with always getting customer feedback at the end of the day. So once we have the problem roadmap, we have to think about how do we actually get our teams together to build these things, to do these things? How do we work in teams? Well, a lean product manager knows that idea generation from the whole team and collaborating with everyone works much better than just going up and telling them to build something. This is a big difference between a lean product manager. They know that ideas can come from anywhere and not just their own. So they're willing to collaborate. They're willing to go to anybody in the company and say, do you have an idea? Tell me. Or do you have a problem? Great. And they bring in their developers at the beginning of the process to start working through that. Because the best ideas come from a group of people. They don't come from one person. So with every company that I do, when we set up MVPs, we do something called a design studio. Has anybody heard of a design studio? Okay, great. So design studios are a really great tool. And what you do is you bring a bunch of people into the room. And I like to include 2 developers, 1 designer, myself, and then a business person. And I bring them into the room Our objective for this sprint, or for this week, or for this month, is to build something that solves our customers' problems in this area. So you align them, you give them requirements, and then everybody gets a piece of paper, and they draw out their ideas. You don't have to be a great drawer, but you just put your ideas down. And you go through rounds of this, and then you come together on the best parts of the idea until you leave the studio in 2 to 3 hours, and you know exactly what you're going to test for that week. So that's how we come up with MVPs. Everybody's involved. And the developers here play a really important role because they're the ones helping the product managers and the UX designers figure out what can we build fast. Because we time box this. We say we're not going to spend 3 months building this. We're going to spend 2 weeks building this. So how can we do that? And my developers have been great with this. They go, you know what? If we do all these fancy features over here, it's going to take an extra 3 months. Let's not do that. Let's get rid of that. If we do this, it's going to take 1 week. Cool. Let's go with that. Or, you know what? If we use email instead of doing HTML, CSS, it'll be a lot faster. Great. Let's do that. So you work with each other to really figure that out. And developers just help people figure out what can you do in the right amount of time. So they lift you up a little bit. So it's really important that these design studios involve the entire team. Now, you might be sitting there as a developer or as somebody who's worked with developers before and say, but I've tried to get developers to do this, and they're like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to talk to customers. I've had a lot of developers actually say, I don't want to talk to customers. And one team that I was just working with had been interviewing customers for 2 weeks. We had our developers out there. They were learning. And at the end of the day, they were like, I just want to build something. I don't want to talk to people. It's cool. I understand it. It's what you do. But not everybody is like that. So whenever I look at developers and try to figure out which ones I want to pull onto these experimental teams, I know that there are some customer problem-focused developers, and there are technical problem-focused developers. We had one developer on my first team who was really, really smart. He wrote Symfony and Doctrine, really great guy. He's super smart. He was 27 years old, and we made him a team lead. And he had to manage 8 developers on his team. And at the end of the day, he came back and he said, I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to fix some bugs, solve some problems. I don't want to deal with people's things. Like, I don't want to go out there. So at that point, we knew he really was interested in problems. He really wasn't interested in solving the customer problems. And that's great. So the hard technical problems to actually solve. But he had 2 people on his team who were sitting there giving us product ideas, and they were really into it. And they said, well, what if we do this kind of product? I think that would be great for our company. And those 2 developers would come with me to the customer interviews. Shocking, right? Developers talking to people? It's insane. So they would come out, they would start talking, but they got really excited about it. We would meet people. For example, there was one person named Anna. One of our developers went back, and every time we tried to build something, he'd be like, Anna wouldn't like that. I was like, who's Anna? He's like, oh, that's the one we talked to 2 weeks ago. Anna wouldn't like that because she said this and this and this during the interview. And you're like, whoa, we have a champion for the user right here in our developers. So as developers, if you do want to implement stuff like this too, I would say, try to figure out, are you a customer developer? Do you care about what the user actually wants or needs? Are you willing to talk to them? Or do you like solving technical problems? Because you shouldn't be to one or the other. You should love. But if you are interested in solving customer problems, this is a perfect place to go. We want you on our teams, working with the product managers to really help us figure out what kind of experiments, what kind of MVPs can we actually run. Because at the end of the day, what we really need to be successful with is take away our ego. If we want to be effective lean product managers, if we want to be effective CEOs or team members, we got to strip out the ego. We got to figure out that it's the customer. It's not for us. It's for the customer. And maybe our ideas aren't the best ideas. Maybe somebody else's idea is the best idea. And we have to be willing to let that go. We have to be willing to give up on them to be successful product managers. So if I was posting something for a lean product manager, these are the roles and responsibilities that I would look for in my job posting. Discover customer problems through constant customer interactions and feedback. Deliver high customer value by running experiments to solve those problems. Involve developers and stakeholders during ideation and throughout the whole process. Manage the problem roadmap, focusing on KPIs, on data. I love data. Report data and lessons from experiments to the rest of the team, because you can't just hold that information in your head and know what's going on. Everybody in the company should know what the customer wants, where we're at, and where we're going. It's because at the end of the day, the whole point of being a product manager is to deliver extreme value to the customer. I think this is what the goal should be for every product manager. It's not about building cool features. It's not about being the next Steve Jobs. It's about delivering value to the people who are paying for your product. I was taking these ideas, and I started writing something called the Lean Product Management Manifesto, which kind of sums this all up. I put it on Twitter, and I got some interesting feedback. One from Marcus, who was like, "Why are you writing a manifesto?" It's right there. A lot of the feedback was positive, and I wanted people to collaborate on this. So I posted a blog post. I put this on Twitter. I got a lot of feedback. I put it through some revisions, and then I came up with this as a starting point. And I've asked a lot of people in the community to help me fix it. So that's what I'm going to ask of you guys as well. So this is a Lean Product Management Manifesto today, and it's a work in progress. And if somebody could help me figure out how to put it on GitHub and submit pull requests, that would be awesome, because I tried to do that yesterday and I could not figure it out. So the Lean Product Management Manifesto: customer problems and needs over internal requirements, data-driven experiments over preconceived solutions, customer problem roadmaps over future roadmaps, idea generation collaboration over product mandates. My goal with this is just to help companies find a way to express what we need out of product managers and help align them towards customer value and away from just features. We need people to stop thinking about features and our outputs and start thinking about our outcomes and how people love it and why do people love it and are we actually solving our customers' problems? Because at the end of the day, that's what every product manager should be responsible for. Thank you.